walk up to her and say, hey, I noticed you from over there and I wanted to come say hello. I wanted to introduce myself. I thought you were cute. Something super simple, just you caught my eye and I'd kick myself later if I didn't say hello. Especially attractive quality women, they are not relying on dating apps.
I was really conflicted about making this video because this channel is not about bringing other people down. But I felt so strongly about this topic that the act of speaking the truth superseded my desire to avoid conflict. So with that said, this video is about why 99% of female coaches don't know what they're talking about. We're going to focus on this one interview with a female coach who has, in my opinion, gotten very famous, and I don't think she's helping that much. But before we do that, a couple of ground rules, guys. Number one, I'm going to focus on talking about the subject of dating advice. I'm going to discuss her ideas, and I may at times attack her ideas, but I never ever attack the person. We can discuss an idea, we can disagree with an idea, but still respect the person. That's number one. Number two, don't dox, go harass, or flame her. That's not cool. This is not a hit piece. I have no agenda other than to show you the truth when it comes to female dating coaches. All of this is my opinion. I could be wrong.
So women want to be approached more and pursued more, at least for what I see in my personal experience, in my relationships with women and what I hear. And then I also conducted some informal survey data of 13,000 women in the US and the UK. 97% said they would rather meet their partner in person than online, and 95% said they wish they were approached more often by men in real life. 95% of anything is crazy. I'm not sure 95% of people would agree the sky is blue.
So this first answer to Chris's question begins this process of the lack of nuance in her understanding of dating, especially for men. And here's why. She says that 95 to 97% of women want men to approach them. But what she doesn't understand is that these women only want to be approached by the men they find really attractive. So if you're not in the top 5 to 10% of guys who would approach a girl who looks like this, then what do you do? As a single guy, you have to understand, especially if you're not good looking and you're a dork and nerd like I was, you have to understand there's certain levels of attraction, right? You have, on one hand, passive attraction. Passive attraction is the attraction that you initially get when you walk into a room. Passive attraction comes from a guy's genetics, his jawline, his height. All that is passive. In other words, he can walk into a room and women see it. Then you have, on the other side, active attraction. Active attraction is everything you're doing that's actively creating attraction. The way you approach her, your nonverbals, your body language when you approach her, the thing you say, how you say it, the subtext of what you're saying. All of that is active value. Active value is game, the way you interact and create those emotions that you want to move the interaction forward. She also doesn't understand that as a single guy, right? I'll just take me as an example. As a regular guy, once you get your baseline SMV, sexual marketplace value, you can learn how to do this in my new book. You have to accept the fact, right? Like when you actually go out in field and you actually do the work, which I don't think she's done, you'll realize that as a single guy, 100% of women, about 20 to 30% of them in America, depending on the city, would not date me no matter how good my active and passive value are. Then about 50% to 60% of them are open to dating me if I can display enough value in how I talk to her and how I present myself, my style, how I groom when I talk to her. Then there is the 20 to 30% that may prefer a guy like me who may, like Asian guys or like my certain look or whatever, right? So those percentages, you have to take those into account. And as a single guy, you have to constantly be thinking, how do I raise my ratios of women that are open to me or prefer me, especially as a minority? The third mistake here is that online surveys, this is a very controversial thing to say, but it's true. When you set a woman or man down in the clinical lab or you put up a survey in front of them, it's triggering the logical brain. What women say they will do and what they actually do in field when you actually go out there and have real experience is very different. When you go out in field, you're gonna find women who they only want to be approached by guys they like, and they'll say, look, I don't mind getting approached, but it has to be at the right time, right? It's like there's certain times when I'm running an errand at a gym, I don't want to be approached. So that 95% number is real sus.
So I really encourage, I do this with all of my clients, and any guys out there who are listening are like, oh, I'm like not meeting women. Keep an approach journal. I challenge you, a note on your phone, a real journal, write down every time you talk to a woman. And you don't have to ask for her phone number. You shouldn't ask for her phone number or ask her out if the conversation doesn't feel like it warrants that. But just how many times you're actually talking to women. And I bet you will be shocked at how few it is.
Okay, so first I want to give her credit, right? So yes, keeping track of how many times you approach is a useful metric. Like as a skinny Asian guy, I not only kept an approach journal, I kept like notes of the conversations I had. I was so socially awkward that every day I go out and I have like try to have two or three interactions. And then I come back and I will write down like how did those interactions go? What did I say that seemed to work? What did I say that didn't seem to work? It was down to the minute detail. She's telling us like her clients are just like, oh, I'm not approaching enough. My clients are like, Giovanni, I am approaching and it's not working. I don't understand where it's not working. So her clients are guys who just have to start, pick up the controller and play the game. My clients are guys who they're playing the game and it's not working. And they're like, how do I beat this level?
Give me a third one. What else?
Just don't try and overcomplicate things. You don't have to have this witty, flirty line that she's never heard before. You can keep it really simple. If your mind goes blank, walk up to her and say, hey, I noticed you from over there and I wanted to come say hello. I wanted to introduce myself.
No! God, please, no! No!
I thought you were cute. Something super simple, just you caught my eye and I'd kick myself later if I didn't say hello. It is fine. It doesn't mean she's going to want to date you. Doesn't even mean she's going to want to talk to you. But if you do that and you have good posture and you have eye contact and you're smiling, you've put your best foot forward and you've done everything you can.
This is such bad advice that I worry for the guys that learn approaching from her. This is what gets me like a little bit angry. And here's why. If you are not conventionally good looking, you cannot go up to a hot girl who looks like her and spit the same lines that a regular white guy can spit, because she's already getting those approaches. So her openers here, any hot girl has heard thousands of times. How do I know? Because I tried them and it does not work. I had to say hello, I'll regret it. You looked really nice. These are lines that every guy's throwing out. And this is how you can tell she's, probably pretty privileged and she's never had to go out there and do field work. Now, for those of you like, well, she's a girl, she can't approach girls. Well, look, there are two women I know who actually deserve credit. One is Kezia Noble. Those of you who don't know her, she was a female dating coach from back in the day. And she was in London and she went out night after night with these guys and she would actually role play with these guys at the club. She'll tell her clients, approach me as if you wanted to talk to me, and she'll correct him. And then live in field at the bar, she'll tell the guy to go approach and fix his mistakes that he's making when he's approaching the girl and talking to her. Another female coach, really precise. I actually saw her. I was in part of their infield training. And this girl, Nicole, the girlfriend of one of my mentors, is so precise with her breakdowns. And my mentor even told me, he's like, I didn't believe that girls could coach, but she actually observed me for like 2 years before she started giving advice. These are women who have put time in the field. They've gone out there with the guys who are their clients and they've observed them in field and they've actually been able to pinpoint, to give, like a coach, precise feedback. Hey, you were blinking too much, or hey, you should have said this instead of this. They were giving extremely precise feedback to the guy to correct, and once the correction happens, suddenly he overcomes the sticking point and he gets to the next stage. He gets a number. He's able to take her on a second date. These girls have done the work. They've paid their dues in field, and this girl, obviously, given her approaching advice, has not. So it makes me angry when someone hasn't put in the work and they're giving advice that obviously does not work. So not only have you not put in the work, you are actively giving advice that does not work for the majority of men unless they're already pretty good looking, in which case they don't really need dating advice. Now, those of you that are actually like struggling, not watching this just for entertainment, like what do you do? Okay, so as a regular guy or as a minority or as a guy who may not look like your competition, you cannot use generic lines like this. So the first rule I have is don't give a line that compliments her beauty. Why? Because beautiful women have heard beauty compliments. They've heard it their whole lives. Instead, you compliment her on her behavior. So for example, I liked your style and I wanted to meet you. You look interesting. Are you? right? So I'm imposing a frame where she might be an interesting person, and that's why I came up to talk to her to see if she's interesting. You look interesting, your style looks interesting. Are you an interesting person as well? That puts more of a challenge on the girl to show you that she's interesting, and you're not just putting her on a pedestal. You're so beautiful, I had to talk to you. Every normal guy has heard some variation of the line, if I didn't talk to you, I would regret it. Oh my God, it's so generic. It does not work. You don't stand out. These lines, when you say them, you have no game because it only works if the girl looks at you and she's already like, oh, this guy passes my, minimum bar, right? Of physical, desirability. But it doesn't give way to that 50% of girls that are like on the fence if you can demonstrate that you're a guy who has value. And she doesn't understand this, obviously, with this advice, and it's just terrible advice, and it makes me mad that she's giving it out because it would not serve you at all if you're a single guy.
Walk up to her and say, hey, I noticed you from over there, and I wanted to come say hello. I wanted to introduce myself. I thought you were cute. Something super simple, just you caught my eye and I'd kick myself later if I didn't say hello, is a green light and it's a great place to start from with your approach. So you're not totally taking her by surprise. You've done a little pre-qualifying. And likewise, if you make eye contact and she quickly looks away and turns her back to you, maybe don't approach. It might not be a viable option. So that can be a good way to pre-qualify. Then when you do walk up, shoulders back, head up, smile, eye contact. It feels a little awkward. It absolutely does. And that's okay. And then, speak with confidence. Don't speak too fast. Slow it down and go for it. And you're going to hear no a lot.
I think most of our clients are like pretty well-off white guys, maybe. This is my guess. Because I get eye contact when I'm in Asia, but when I'm in the States, I almost never get eye contact. Maybe like 1 out of 10% of the time. And so if you're relying on her advice as a guy who's not, top 10%, you're never going to get eye contact. And so you'll never approach. I'll give her credit. So you want to have like good posture. You want to smile on the open, but don't smile too much. A lot of guys hear the advice, smile like, hey, I wanted to meet you. You look beautiful and I wanted to meet you. How's it going? Hi. And what they don't realize is that the smile is only in the first 2 to 3 seconds so that your emotions are congruent. If you're smiling like the Joker all the time, people don't believe you anymore. You see, this is now fake. But if you smile, hey, you looked interesting and, I wanted to meet you. What is your name? This is more believable because now I believe that the facial expressions are congruent to what you're really feeling and you're not being fake to me. Her other advice where you eye contact and the girl looks away like this, you never really know for sure. Sometimes the girl's just shy. So the way you tell the difference is what we call with body language clusters, right? If the girl's like this and she's shy, she could just be shy. But if she's like, yeah, obviously don't approach that, right? So there's a lot of nuance to the advice she's giving. Expect rejection a lot. That's funny because like, yes, with cold approaches, it's a numbers game. You're talking to people, you have no idea what they're like. But if you're in the right venue and you select the right people to talk to, and you have a good game, you should be getting at least numbers, at least 50% of the time. There's a technique that I learned from one of my mentors. It's called forcing the interest. So what he does is he'll get a glass of wine, and the country he's in, it's a social convention to kind of toast people. So he gets a glass of wine from the bar and he walks around and he toasts people. And the girls that toast him back, and some of them toast him like, others are like smiling as they're toasting him. Those are the girls that he approaches later on. What she's saying is just make eye contact. That's fine. But if you actually do what my mentor does and force an interest, then your chances are much higher. That way you take control of the situation rather than just letting things happen as they are.
It's the product and the market and marketing and how you put them together and present yourself to women. And it's even more important to be able to market yourself well today in a world with things like online dating and social media where women's options have quadrupled, or 100x'd. And so you have to be able to stand out. The challenge for men dating is how do I stand out so women give me a shot and notice me? Okay. Where the challenge for women is how do I tell who's actually going to be a good partner between the smoke and the noise?
So I give credit where it's due. She's correct, right? Women have a lot more options given the technological advances with online apps. Guys' problem is attraction. How do I attract the girl? How do I stand out from my competition? A girl's problem is presentation and filter. How do I present well enough to get the leads? And from there, how do I filter the right guy that's right for me?
If you have anything short of an A+ dating profile, you're not going to get matches. And the reality is, even if you have an A+ dating profile, but you have some other characteristics that make online dating challenging for you, you still aren't going to get matches. But there are things to do to improve your online dating game. And then in terms of offline, so much goes into it. What you look like, that is part of it. I'll have guys who come to me and they're like, I've never had a match online. And then I'm like, what? You're decent looking. Okay, let's do this. We make a profile and then they have more matches than they know what to do with because the bar is really low.
So few men are optimizing this.
Yes, they're just throwing up the selfie that they took in their car because they needed a 6th photo and saying that they like burritos.
And I have to say, her online dating advice is actually pretty good. I can tell she's looked at a lot of guy profiles, and being a hot girl, she knows what girls are looking for. Once you start online dating, you realize how stupid and low effort most people are. Most guys don't have good photos. Most guys don't hire a photographer and stylist to get their photos done. Most guys are sending the same lines, hi, how are you, over and over again. As an experiment, sign up as a decent looking girl on a dating app and you'll see what your competition is doing. And most of them are doing very stupid, common, basic things. So I would say if you listen to Blaine at all, her online dating advice is actually not bad. So I give her credit in this area, online dating. But she shouldn't be teaching people how to approach.
I guarantee if you took a random sample of 20 hot girls, at least half of them would say I don't really use dating apps because I meet enough people in real life. I'm approached often. I have a good network. And then the other half might say, I use it for fun or entertainment here and there, but I don't go out with that many guys. And then maybe, half of that half actually use it. But especially attractive quality women, they are not relying on dating apps.
Interest.
Unfortunately, she is right. Imagine if you have a circle of female model friends, which I did for a period in my life. Most of them are getting hit up directly in the DMs by guys who have value. They're on apps like Raya where you have to apply to get in. They are, meeting guys at modeling events. They don't need dating apps as a channel for leads, right? And when they do sign up for dating apps, my model friends, they're so overwhelmed. They're I have 500 messages. And she just got on the app last week and she just I can't read through all this. This is crazy. And they give up. So she is right. I think she's a very attractive girl and she has other friends who are attractive. And so if you want to get feedback from her and say, look, I want to get girls like you, tell me about the psychology of girls who look like you, I think she'd be a good coach, right? That being said, you can go to any girl who looks like her and she'll give you the same feedback. But I will give her credit, this advice is correct. That's why for me, whenever I go out and cold approach, my quality from cold approaching is always 1 or 2 points higher than even if I spend a lot of time with online dating. Occasionally, online dating, I'll get the girl that's high quality. It's once a month and it takes a lot of effort. Whereas cold approaching at my skill level is better ROI if I can find the right venues.
But look for something in her profile that other people might not notice or you can speak to. Maybe she has a photo in Croatia and you've spent time in Croatia. You can say oh, let me guess, that's in Hvar. She's interested in knowing more, interested in going on a date, and then segue to the date. So that can be as little as 2 or 3 back and forths, as much as 10, but anything more than that is you're doing too much talking and you're becoming a pen pal.
She is right in the sense that you want to move away from talking too much onto the date as soon as possible. Here are 2 things that she's missing. 1, if a guy takes the time to read every single profile and come up with something clever, he won't have the time to go through all the swiping and every single match on all his dating apps. Because of the supply and demand, you have to figure out a way you can message a girl without having to be specific to her app profile. And you send that message out almost as a test. You're qualifying to see if she's even interested in how you look. Once she responds, then you can look at her profile and then you come up with something more specific. The reason is because of the supply and demand of online dating. As a guy, you have to put out a lot of feelers and that's an initial screen. I used to have a Filipino assistant who would send the first message for me. And there are a couple of first messages in my course, but I'll give you one for free here. A very simple first message that makes you stand out. Press 1 for a funny joke or 2 for an interesting question or interesting fact. This just makes it easy for her to reply. And the girls I reply, I know they're interested. Then I respond to that. Then I'll ask her a question or make a statement about her profile. So I'm sending out these messages very quickly to test the waters to see who's even interested. Then once they reply back, then I read their profile. She's giving texting advice based on the guy like being physically at her level. So if you're not physically at her level, then what you want to do is you want to get off the app as soon as possible, because as long as you're on the app, you're just another guy on an app. But once you get off the app, if you get her Instagram or WhatsApp, what you can do to really stand out is leave voice notes. Once she hears your voice, it's like you shift from like a stranger to like, oh, this is Giovanni's a real person now. He's actually talking to me, right? And if you're not conventionally good looking, or if you're a minority, you have to make that switch where they see you as a real person. Because it's very easy to swipe or reject a profile. It's harder to reject a real person. So her advice is good for guys who are already like pretty high up there, but I don't think she's advanced enough with the nuances to help someone who isn't there. In fact, I think her advice might be dangerous for guys who aren't at that level.
A third of your effort should be spent towards making a connection. So helping her see that you have things in common, that you have shared interests, shared values. A third of your effort should be assessing if she is a good fit for you. So if she fits the criteria you're looking for, if she's interesting. And then the third of the effort is put towards flirting and having fun. So even if those two things aren't there and she's not your person, ideally you both still had a little fun. You can still flirt a little bit, practice that.
Her advice is right for most guys. But in the States, right, sometimes you'll get that date where she's not quite sure if she wants to date an Asian guy, or she goes on a date with you, but she's not that excited about you. Or maybe she just doesn't have that date with the guy she really wants, and she's free on Friday night and she's going on a date with you. So you have to recognize those things when they happen, especially if you're not a guy who's already, in the top 20%. So in those cases, you have to go on a date and you have to realize that there's a lack of attraction. She's attractive enough to go on that date with you, but she's not there at the level where she's like willing to give you a fair shot. So this game here, she doesn't know how to play it because she's never played it before. You have to think about it in terms of how much attraction do I have in that bar, and how much comfort and connection do I have at this bar. Comfort and connection is getting to know her and being interesting and having deep, meaningful commonalities. But attraction is where you're still showing, like, demonstrating value, and you have to recognize when those bars need to be filled.
The type of man who comes to a woman and is seeking help in his dating life often has a very robust life outside of dating. A lot of people assume like, oh, they hired someone who hires a dating coach, he must be like a real loser. And that is absolutely not the case. Most of my clients are successful professionals, have robust social lives, hobbies, lots of friends, family that they are engaged with. They aren't the ones who aren't seeing any friends and family for a month at a time. And it's just their dating life that they're confused about, and they want to level up and match where the rest of their life already is. I would say for men who are really struggling with loneliness and making friends and leaving their house, that is something that needs to be addressed first and separately than thinking about how am I going to get a woman to join me, because no woman is going to want to join you on your lonely couch where you never leave 6 nights a week.
Okay, was I right or was I right? So her clients are like well adjusted, but just need a little bit of guidance on their dating lives, right? Like, here's where I think she gets it wrong with the guys that struggle. She's saying if you struggle and you're depressed and lonely, go see a therapist or go see a psychiatrist or get that handled first. This is a very dangerous path, and here's why. I was that guy. I graduated from a good school, I got a good job, I got the apartment, the car, I did everything that my parents' society told me to do. And after I did that, I still felt depressed and lonely, and I was alone in the big city. I was an immigrant, and I just didn't know how to build a life. At that point, if I had taken Blaine's advice and go see a therapist, I would have gone in circles with a therapist. And maybe the therapy is good to resolve some past trauma for sure, but all of that is internal work. There's a point of diminishing returns, right? At some point, you have to take action in this world for things to happen for you. So as a lonely guy, and you go out, and whether you find some other guy who's on the same path as you, or you go out by yourself, you're practicing your social skills. You're letting your brain know that it's okay to talk to people. You're proving to yourself that, oh, I'm taking action. I'm still getting rejected, but hey, maybe this rejection wasn't as harsh, or hey, maybe I got 1 number out of 10 this time. you're proving to your brain that there is like a level up. There's a way to move up that process, that spiral of success, right? And eventually you get to a point where you're like, oh wow, I got my first date, or oh, I got my first number, or I got my first girlfriend. So you can't just tell a guy, oh, work on yourself long term. That therapy and that long term like inner game has to be combined with outer action. And both of these are together. And this is how you can tell she doesn't have the field experience. She's never been in that situation before, so she can't give advice on that. But as a guy who's been in that situation, I know that when you're lonely by yourself and you're like struggling, yes, sometimes you need to handle your finances. As a man, you need to handle your health, no problem. But if you're okay on those two fronts and you're like, oh, I gotta work on my inner game, I gotta make more money, I gotta go to therapy, you have to take action, and just to prove to your brain that there are women out there who inspire you and that you can take action towards that. Without that, you have no inspiration. And you could spend years, sometimes the best years of your life, your physical prime, just working on yourself and being a Sigma male. And let me tell you, man, as a guy, if you take no action, 99% of guys, even the good looking ones, some of them are my clients, if you don't take action, nothing happens for you as a guy. Sorry. As a girl, you can be a hot girl, go on a dating app and get tons of dates. As a guy, you have to take action. You have to do something. You cannot just sit there and work on yourself and expect things to happen. You have to learn how to talk to women. There's no shortcut here.
Women want three things. Women want status, which we sort of just talked about. They want to feel desired, and they want to have fun. And if you are missing one of these three things, you probably aren't going to be a romantic partner for her. So if you're high status and you're having fun, but you're not appropriately expressing your desire, like the romantic side, she might think you're an awesome guy and even really compelling, but she's not going to sleep with you. She's not going to be romantically interested in you. Or if you're flirty and fun and you are telling her, giving her the desire point, and you're having a good time with her, but she doesn't see that you have status and that you're going places, she might entertain you in the moment, but she's also not going to see you as long-term potential.
That's not true. Dan Bilzerian, party guy, high status, has fun, doesn't show interest in a girl, makes them chase him. She doesn't understand how to create a situation where the girl chases you, where there's thirst, right? With high value guys who have that setup or create that setup for them. Her advice is good for like generic guys who just want like basic dating advice. This is so far from where it should be in terms of skill level. If you're a younger guy, right, you need to display how you think about where you want to go, right? You can be ambitious. If you're older, then you have that time to accumulate wealth, and you haven't, you need a different game plan. If you show a woman that you desire her and she sees you as lower value than her in terms of sexual marketplace value, you cannot just say, I want you, right? You have to show status, yeah, but status can be defined through your behavior patterns as well. So you have to communicate in a way where your status is equal to or higher than hers. Then you show her you want her, you desire her. But an even more advanced tactic is just to prize it. So it's like you're not showing her you desire her. You're showing, hey, we're both high value. Let's play together. Or like, hey, I have other options. And almost like get her to chase you a little bit. And this is where the higher levels of game is played, or that she doesn't understand because she's never done it before. Do not learn cold approach game from women, unless they're the very rare exception that have paid their dues and spent time in the field. They have gotten the experience to give this advice. Unfortunately, with dating advice, we don't have credentials. You don't take a test. There's no driver's license test, right? You don't have any proof that you've done the work, unless you have a bunch of infield videos, right? Blaine is someone who is well off. She's a pretty girl. She might give good feedback on some things, especially online dating, but do not take approaching advice from her, in my opinion. I don't think most of her advice applies if you're a minority or if you're below average looking or even average looking. I think if you're a good looking white guy, go buy her course. She does marketing, not sales, which is interesting, right? Because marketing is important to some degree, but you got to get the sale. So if you're thinking about branding your online profile, you have, that's I want to optimize my online profile. I already have a pretty good life. I think she might be the right coach for you. If I were being completely real with you, online dating is pretty easy. Anybody who has seen a lot of profiles can start to trigger the pattern recognition and give good advice. Where the real skill is, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, I don't think I am, but I could be. I think the real dating coach is someone who has spent time in the field, who have approached many people, who have gotten that experience and had enough 10,000 hours where they can spot the patterns now of other people doing the approach and making the mistakes on dates and making a mistake on text, where they understand the underlying attraction, comfort, and connection that men and women have. In particular, female to male attraction, where a lot of guys don't understand this. And that's where the real game is being played. Unfortunately, a lot of those guys have since retired, including myself, or they are so underground that you haven't heard of them. And in today's culture, if they come out too much, if they post a bunch of infields, they get flamed on and hated a lot by a lot of people. And it's unfortunate because 10 years ago, there was a time when you could see infield and you can actually learn that's how men and women behave in real life, right? And now we don't have those clips because they've all been taken down. Recently, I had a comment on my book. This guy objectifies women, And I'm like, dude, I wrote my book like very, I think it's very polite. And that's how male and female dynamics work. And we live in this world now. If I give advice on like, for example, okay, disqualification, right? If I'm talking to a girl and I say, hey, you looked interesting, I wanted to meet you. And then she says, yeah, sure, but I'm kind of in a hurry. I'm actually have a meeting in 10 minutes. I give you advice, like, don't give up, try again with the disqualifier. It's like, hey, I'm not hating on you or anything. It's just that I'm new to LA. You look really stylish and I wanted to make a new connection, right? When I give advice like that, I have people telling me like, you're harassing women. She wants to be left alone. You're a creep. It's like, bro, that's wild, right? Because you have so many different opinions on the internet. I'll tell you, this is a real story that happened to me. And as soon as she said, hey, I'm on my way to a meeting, I have about 10 minutes, I said, oh, it's all good. I'm not hitting on you or anything. I'm just new in town. And she's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, do you work in fashion? What's going on? And I said, yeah, I used to model for a while. I'm here. I'm doing this job now. I got her Instagram, and funny enough, it turned out she was just on the way to meeting. She had a time limit, but I met her again and she introduced me to like all her friends. So the advice I'm giving you is like, don't give up on the first try, re-engage again. People are taking that the wrong way. It's like, you're harassing women, you're a creep and stalker. Like, dude, it's like you can't even put dating advice out there anymore. And I don't want the flack, and also I'm too old to like keep going on in the field, but I feel sad for the industry where now you have like vanilla level dating advice that doesn't help a lot of people, in my opinion, that are really struggling. And you have guys who they're trying to tell you what really happens out there in the field and they're getting shut down, right? Now, to be fair, some of them are really creepy. They're the guys that are like super creepy, they're like super weird, that are really harassing women. I don't condone that. But there are also a lot of guys who are giving real advice that can't say what they want to say, and they can't tell you the truth of how men and women behave at the bar in the field. And it's unfortunate that it's come to this, okay? The good news is this knowledge still exists. If you look hard enough, it's out there on the web. They're in courses as well. There are a couple of coaches, guy coaches who post in fields that I think are pretty good. I've done some reviews of it on my channel. So it's not all lost, right? But if you're a guy who's struggling, if you're single, I don't think, in my humble opinion, that you should take advice from women. The only exception is if you're already pretty well adjusted, you have a lot going on for you, and you actually want feedback from a girl who looks like this, because she probably has a lot of insight to her girlfriends and what they really want. And what she's going to tell you is, you've already heard from this interview, be rich, have status, and then do all the normal things that a guy would without making any major mistakes. And to me, that's not really game. That's just like basic social skills. Game is to be able to convince someone who actually may not be into you at first to slowly and actually fall for you because you don't look like the part. Winning someone who already has a prejudice, a preconception of who you are, and then changing their mind about you, turning that no into a yes. That's where the game is played for the majority of men. And to do that, you have to understand how to deal with resistance and manage it and navigate that. And that art has been lost, and it's sad to me.